Hi, this is Majnu, and this is video number 10 of the series of practical endgames. We see here a position of two bishops against a knight and a bishop. Equality in material. Each side have 7 pawns, and the white king is more active than the black one. Also, if we look at the activity of the pieces, we can see that this bishop on c8 is not very active, and the knight on d7 doesn't have many squares to go as well. It's white to move in this position, and by the way, this game was played in 1929, and the player that was playing white here is the famous Capablanca, world champion José Raúl Capablanca. He's playing against a player whose name is George Alan Thomas. Now, if it was black to move here, perhaps black would like to activate this knight by bringing it, for example, to f8, and then after that, well, either to e6 or to h7 to chase this bishop away and then advance this pawn, right? So this would be a way for black to achieve some active play. This is exactly the reason why Capablanca in this game, at this moment, he played the move, beautiful move, bishop to e7. It's only meant to cripple this knight on d7. The knight doesn't have any place to go now. And what black did here is he played the move b5, sacrificing a pawn in order to get some piece activity on the queen side, to be able to play knight to b6. Now this pawn sacrifice was accepted by Capablanca, and knight to b6 was played now, of course, with a simple threat of winning a piece here by forking king and bishop. So Capablanca played bishop to c4. Now black traded this knight for his bishop, like this, and we got into this endgame with 1 pawn more for white, but opposite colored bishops. If we return just a few moves here in this position, Capablanca must have had so much insight in the endgame that he could tell already that even if these bishops are of opposite color, in this endgame he would have winning chances. That's why he played this move bishop to c4 without being afraid of this trade. Let me show you how the game continued. King to b7, so black is trying to activate his king, and now white plays d5, placing his pawns on light squares, so then the dark square bishop has influence over the dark squares. With d5 he also prevents the move c6, so this will stay a weak pawn on c7. Here black played f4. So black is trying to use the same idea of placing his pawns on dark squares so his bishop can go to f5 and have some activity. Ace a4 by white, bishop to f5, and now bishop to g5, attacking the pawn on f4. So this means that black is actually sacrificing a second pawn to get piece activity. King to c8, bishop takes f4. Probably George Alan Thomas, playing black, had this position in his mind, and he thought that this would be solid enough to hold, and to hold a draw. So he played here king to b7 back. It looks as if things on the king side are quite static. It's not easy to make a pass pawn here on the king side, and on the queen side the king is preventing white from advancing his pawn. So how to continue this? How to win this? Well, White played here the move h3. Oh, I hear some noise outside. Okay, that was a police car driving by, that is towards another street. Okay, so we continue here playing chess calmly. So h3 played by Capablanca with the idea, of course, of playing g4. Now it's not really possible to prevent this g4. We cannot play with black h4 because then bishop to g5 and then h4 falls. So here black played bishop to b1. We can say this is just a waiting move. Now g4 was played. H takes, and now king to a7. Black can only wait. Again the question how to translate this position into a winning position. Well, the plan of white is to create a passed pawn on the king side here. First he removes the bishop to d2. The king goes to b6 where it defends the a5 pawn, and now Capablanca plays f4. Black plays bishop to e4, and Capablanca continues with f5 now. Surprise! It looked first as if it was impossible to create a passed pawn here because he's actually giving a pawn here, right? The subtle idea behind this is that after g takes f5, white doesn't take on f5, but Capablanca advances his pawn to g5, and now, talking again about piece activity, this pawn is obstructing his own bishop. The bishop no longer can defend the g6 square, so this pawn is becoming a dangerous weapon now. Now, to prevent this pawn from advancing, black played f4 here, giving the pawn back. So bishop takes f4. Now the bishop can go to g6. Again, we have a position that looks quite static. It looks as if black is controlling the key squares. He is controlling with his bishop g6, so this pawn cannot advance, and is controlling with his king these two squares, so there is no way of making any progress for white. That's how it looks. But the game continues. Capablanca plays now bishop to e3 check, getting back control over the dark squares c5 and b6. The king goes back to b7, and now he advances the c pawn to c5. After d takes e5, king to b4. The idea is to create a second passed pawn on the queen side now, and even if both bishops are of opposite color, if white has on two wings a passed pawn, then it's easy to win the game. The game continues with bishop to c2. Black attacks the pawn on a4. The king takes on c5 and the bishop takes on a4. Now here it was possible to advance the pawn to g6, but an even more beautiful way of winning is to play what Capablanca did, bishop to d2. Black cannot hold this pawn on a5. It's impossible to defend it, so he plays his bishop back to c2 to guard the g6 square. Now bishop takes a5 follows. The bishop goes to g6, and here comes the final breakthrough, d6. After c takes d6 check, king takes d6, white has achieved what he wanted. Two different passed pawns, one on the king side, one on the queen side, and it's now they are so far away from each other that it's impossible for black to stop them both. Now in this position black resigned, but let's have a look just to understand why this is won. What could have happened? Let's say that black plays bishop to e8, attacking this pawn and still controlling g6. Then the king goes to c5 to defend the pawn. Bishop to g6. Bishop to c3, placing the bishop in a more active position, black waits simply, and then this bishop goes to e5. Black continues moving back and forth, and now we start advancing with b6. If the bishop goes here again, it looks as if black is holding it. The king controls b7, prevents this pawn from advancing, and the bishop controls g6, preventing this pawn from advancing. But it continues. Now bishop to c7. The bishop defends this pawn on b6, so this king is free to walk to the other side of the board. You see? So here there is actually no way how to prevent the white king from walking, using these dark squares to walk towards f6 and then advance a pawn. So this is the technique of using these two passed pawns to advance, and it's simply loss for black. Now if we return to the initial position, just summarizing, it's all about preventing piece activity in this endgame. The first move is preventing the black knight from moving, and black sacrifices a pawn to get some piece activity. Bishop to c4 is a wonderful move. Capablanca saw that this endgame was better for him and he had concrete winning chances here. Actually, this is a weakness. This is a weakness, and we can say that this is also a weakness. While white's pawns, the pawn structure of white is much more solid. He has only two pawn islands, one here and one here. And then we see how the pawns are placed on the color of opposite to the bishop, so the bishop can control the other color. And then we see how white creates in a beautiful way a passed pawn by playing f5 here. It looks like a mistake, like you're returning, giving away a pawn, but with g5 this pawn advances. Now f4, and we get to this position where white creates these two different passed pawns, one on the king side, one on the queen side, and here black resigned. Alright, I hope that you found this interesting and instructive, and if you would like to study some more of Capablanca's endgames, there is this book that I'm holding now in my hands, and this example comes from this book. It's called Capablanca's Best Chess Endings, written by Irving Chernev. 60 complete games. 60 complete games with the emphasis on the endgame. So the endgames are, I find, very well explained by Chernev. He did a very good job. It's a book that's it's not very new, but it's still very useful, since actually these games of Capablanca, I think they will never be forgotten, since we can still learn from his way of handling the endgame. It's actually amazing that the players in those times could, I mean, without computers, without any e-books or softwares or internet, they could develop their playing strength to such heights, and the understanding of the endgame of Capablanca is really amazing. Well, enough talking, and I'll just leave you here now, and I'll say goodbye and see you next time on YouTube.